More than 120 million U.S. Census forms began arriving in mailboxes this week, but these forms are generating some fear and some pushback. There are reports that as many as 1 in 10 people say they will not participate. Here with more on what the census does and does not count is Alvin Boutte, head of the Mayor's Complete Count Committee. Mr. Boutte, welcome to Chicago tonight.
Phil, thank you very much.
First of all, big picture, what's at stake for Chicago?
What's at stake for Chicago? Approximately $400 million every year, to put it simply.
And the more people that, the bigger the population, the more money the city gets.
Exactly. The more people that are counted by the census, the more money is directed to the city that rightfully belongs to the city.
According to one poll, most people say they see no personal benefit to filling out the form. What would you say to those folks?
Think about the schools. Let's look at the schools first. First of all, I mean, everybody knows what's happening at the schools, that there's budget deficits here, budget deficits in every school system. There's 400, for approximately every person that's not counted, Phil, by the U.S. Census, that's $19,000 that's lost to the local economy, lost to Chicago in federal funding over 10 years.
$19,000, so that's just not education funding, it's other things, it's road construction? And
road construction, sewer systems, as I said, education, jails that are built across the Chicagoland, or excuse me, in Cook County. Pretty much everything that comes from the federal government is related to the census.
So that's like a $19,000 support check that the federal government sends the city on your behalf. All right, well, let's take a look at the form, and you brought one in with you, sure, and we're going to put it up on the screen as well. There are only 10 questions on this form, and the first one is the most important. How many people were living or staying in this house, apartment, or mobile home on April 1st, 2010? And you simply put, like, you know, the number of people. And the other questions are, I don't know, they seem fairly innocuous. What are you telling people about the difficulty of filling out this form?
Well, 10 questions, 10 minutes, 10 answers. We keep everything simple and sweet with the census. We encourage everyone to fill it out as basic as possible. And this is the shortest census form, essentially, that's been ever printed, well, printed since 1790 when the census first came out.
Since 1790, this is the shortest one?
Shortest form. In 1790, there were 8 questions on the census. Prior to this, there were 2 forms that went out. One was a long form that was probably 20 questions on it. Today, we just go with the 10 questions.
A lot of people are reluctant to, have expressed reluctance to it. You know, for example, they ask, what is your phone number? Why does the government need to know what a person's phone number is?
There are a lot of questions on there. The most important questions that's not necessarily one of the more important questions. The federal government, of course, wants information on everybody for a lot of different reasons. For that question, I really don't know the answer.
One suggestion is that if the government has a question about how you fill out the form, they want to know how to be able to reach you.
Always a good way to track back.
Might be that simple. But, you know, there has been pushback. For example, there's, a question of, do you rent or own your home? What is a person's race? Does the head of the household sometimes live or stay somewhere else? Heightened concerns about privacy. What do you say to people who say, you know what, that's none of your business?
Well, Phil, one of the main things that it comes back to with the census, it's put together, one, for federal funding, but also for demographic information related to congressional districts. This is a very non-political effort, of course, always. It's very non-partisan. There were some arguments back and forth earlier in Congress about what questions should be on, what questions should not be on. But when it comes down to it, this is based so that people can be tracked by demographic, so we can know where certain ethnic groups live and reside, so we know essentially how to direct certain proceeds to those communities.
Well, there's also this question about ethnic or racial background. What do you say to people who, for example, some people who are undocumented, sure, people who are Muslim and think, you know what, I just don't want the government to know, because if there's, if something happens and all of a sudden there's some kind of an anti-terror thing, I don't want my name on a list.
Sure. Well, there's the main thing that I preach to people with the census is that all the information is confidential. Everything is confidential with the census. It goes to one department in the U.S. Commerce. It never reaches over to any of the other departments.
Doesn't go to INS. It doesn't go to Homeland Security.
Never.
You say never, but you know there are people out there who say, oh, please.
Punishable by a $250,000 fine.
Who's punished by that much?
Whoever discloses information related to the census is fined $250,000 and 5 years in prison.
So why do you think
federal prison? on top of that.
Well, so why do you think there's so much fear in some quarters about the census?
The education on that, and that's why we put together the Correct Count Committee the way we did. For example, I'm co-chair of the committee with Claire Mugnana. Claire is vice president of Chicago Public School Board. We've put together subcommittees underneath us. For example, we have an immigrant subcommittee, a veteran subcommittee, people with disabilities, seniors, ex-offenders, educational, business, community-based, and so on and so forth.
So you have a strategy for reaching all those different groups.
Each committee our main focus is to reach those hard-to-count areas, to reach the people that are fearful of the census, we don't say not educated to the census, but just don't understand that.
Well, you know, it only comes around every 10 years, so it's sort of like re-educating everyone. But what happens if you don't fill out the form and you don't send it back?
They knock on your door.
How many times?
As many times as it takes to get you an answer, to fill out the form.
I read somewhere that the Census Bureau is prepared to send somebody knocking at your door like 6 times.
I've heard as many as 3 on average. And that's another big part of the census right now. For the time that we're in, for this recessionary environment that we're in, for the local economy, we're hired so many people. For each census office, there are 9 census offices in the Chicagoland area. That's 300 employees per office.
So in other words, if people fill out their forms, then you don't have to hire as many people, don't have to use them as much, and it saves the government money. What happens if you don't fill out the form completely? Some people are saying, you know what, I'm just going to answer question number 1, how many people are here, and that's it. Well, will that still be counted?
Everything will be counted. The main thing is getting the form filled out as much as possible and getting it back to the office. At that point, everyone is counted.
Okay, say you just answer question 1, though, and you send it in. Is somebody going to come knocking on your door to ask for the rest of that information?
No.
No?
No. Well, because the main thing is that it goes back. So technically, we encourage everyone to fill out every question.
All right.
But that's a trick question.
All right, Alvin Boutte, happy counting.
Thank you very much.